Arc Raiders kicked off its life cycle to smashing success compared to other new IPs out there, with plenty of depth right up front and a handful of substantial updates to follow since then. But rounding out of the holiday break to start the year, many people were wondering what's next. It was a good first 2 months, but what does the future hold? As it turns out, 2026 may not be letting off the gas at all, as Embark confirmed quite a bit is on the horizon, with even a roadmap coming in the near future to lay it all out for us, but we'll also see many large-scale additions this year. Today we're running down the new information and what you should know about with this upcoming content at large for Arc Raiders and what you can expect to see along the way. Drop your thoughts, drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Arc Raiders and other FPS content. I'd love to have in the community, but for now, let's get into it. So firstly, when's our next content update? The other day, we saw that we had an update for Arc Raiders. The first notable one, we did have one before that, but it was a small patch to simply remove the ability to gain console command access and adjust things in an unfair degree in a comparative gameplay experience. But the update that we saw the other day was actually mentioned, marketed, and had some fixes, but not a ton that would be incredibly notable. A kettle fix to lower the fire rate cap, thus rendering any macros useless. A trigger nade nerf, which delayed the detonation and reduced the damage to the outer radius of that explosion, but all in all, didn't really kill off the nade spam. You'll still see that happen a lot in PvP lobbies. And then things like fixing keycard exploits that allowed players to keep them after entering the rooms, and changing some of the lighting on Stella Montis to make flashlights and listening more relevant to the gameplay experience. So at that point, with the first air quote update of the year only bringing along so little, many were wondering, okay, well, when's the next content update? And I mean, 100% valid, because at that same point, we saw the removal of the Cold Snap event, taking away that project and subsidiary reward track. Then take away the map condition, so like, what's next? You kind of strip the game a little bit of what a lot of people were enjoying of those rotations and what you could take part in. Nothing as of that update, but apparently there is more on the way soon. More immediately and seemingly all but guaranteed is another map modifier coming called Toxic Swamp. This is coming from the upcoming set of trials, starting in just a day and a half or so depending on when you watch this video, on January 19th. That week's trials will include damaging queens or matriarchs, searching first wave husks, dealing damage to shredders, opening arc probes, and delivering thermal rocks with the tag of Toxic Swamp as the exclusivity for how you can do that. Now, thermal rocks is likely referring to like the volcanic rocks that we see around the maps already, perhaps a new item being added in explicitly for this Toxic Swamp event, but seemingly delivering them to these toxic pools wherever they may be. While nothing has been said explicitly about the map condition, it does seem like it will perhaps be akin to the Cold Snap, but in a more localized region around the map it's on. Kind of like the inverse of what you had with the Cold Snap, where you have to go to these areas and then be in danger for perhaps prolonged exposure, rather than the Cold Snap you went to locations to seek shelter from the damage. Now, none of that is confirmed, full transparency, but it would appear to make logical sense based off the imagery that we've seen here associated with these map conditions and what we've seen leaked so far. But okay, we know of a new map condition coming, pending no changes in just under 2 days' time, but does that mean anything else? A new map, archetype, weapon on items, project, or reward track? All of those are still variables up for debate, but it was recently detailed in a Games Radar interview with Embark's design lead, Virgil Watkins, that 2026 is indeed going to be packed with quite a few notable things. Mainly from this interview, maps. Stating in regards to some maps, weapons, objectives, enemies, and so on and so forth, sometime soon, I believe we're putting out a chunk of a roadmap for the upcoming months. But right now, it's kind of deciding exactly that cadence and that stuff that comes along with it. And you are correct on the types of content, and we're going to parcel that out across the coming year. Some of it is reacting to things you're talking about here, like how players are actually engaging with the game and things that they're doing, but a lot of it is for us trying to see how we can move the experience forward. Of course, adding a new map has its own novelty, and it's a new place to play and do that, but what else? Thematically, gameplay-wise, how did the enemies and the items and the experiences and all that point towards something? It's kind of getting that thematically cohesive stuff together that feels like, oh, guys, whatever update just came out for Arc Raiders, let's go check that out. That's what we're trying to template out for the coming months. And then when mentioned about Bluegate, he had mentioned it's funny when you bring up Bluegate, because if you look at the actual land area, it's not the biggest, but it feels huge, which I think is the fun quirk of how the layout and things come together. Spaceport, if you talk about pure land area and available play space, that's the biggest. I think Spaceport is something like 1.6 by 1.4 kilometers, whereas Buried City and Bluegate are about 1 by 1. But obviously, they have different densities on the inside, so that becomes a bit hard to calculate. The ambition is to try and pair it with some type of new experience. experience, whether that's the map conditions or weather conditions we put in to make the play feel different, enemy types or compositions feeling different, or we're escalating the type of loot available there. Stellamontis was a big jump up in a new, rarer tech, and some new blueprints and things that can drop, and just offering new types of experiences. The Shredder, for example, is an enemy that currently only appears in Stellamontis, which, side note, they did mention before that the Shredder would be coming to other maps, so it seems like that could be something to also consider in the future. Whether that be new maps upcoming or being added to existing ones, we don't quite know. He then said, how do we keep not necessarily escalating all the time, but giving you a new way to play, a new way to approach, making you make different decisions with things you've already been using in one context and trying to use it in a different way in another context, and providing more options for the player, like can ziplines now be used this way, or now I have a far greater use for things like mines or noisemakers because of the way this level is playing, and things like that. But the single most biggest important announcement out of this interview, I think, while gaining context of some of these other plans for upcoming, is that he said there are going to be multiple maps coming this year, and I think it's going to be across a spectrum of size to try and facilitate different types of gameplay. So you might see some that are smaller, and you might see some that are even grander than what we have now. So multiple maps coming this year. Very curious as to the cadence of that, because, I mean, multiple would make it sound like we're going to have a couple throughout 2026. That could be 4, 5, 6, who knows, maybe even more, maybe less. But would that be something of one every 2 months, one every 3 months? And if so, when you're talking about already planning out and having the idea for when these will launch throughout 2026, multiple maps could insinuate that one very well is right on the horizon here. Because if you are going to, again, have like one a quarter, one every 2 months, well, we're almost already a quarter of the way through when we see Arc Raiders like first year of support, starting back at the end of October, seeing Stellamontis in mid-November, if I'm not mistaken. So you're coming up on 3 months since the game has launched, and then almost like 2.5 from whenever Stellamontis launched. So you're coming up on when we should theoretically have one right on the horizon here, but we just don't know what that cadence will be like to see if that's actually 100% true. But I'm curious to see how they keep the rhythm, how they keep the game flourishing through the next 12 plus months here, because it had a great start, has had a great continuation since then, but how do you keep that anticipation, that hype up? How do you keep pushing the boundaries a little further? We've talked about it before. It's actually kind of insane that Arc Raiders has, as the last couple of months, kept pushing that boundary for their peak player count in concurrent players. Like, that's not something that usually happens. You'll have these large launches be these pinnacles and the peaks for most of these games out there, but Arc Raiders keeps flirting with and has broken it many times since its launch, coming into a higher player count than that initial first peak. So I'm curious to see what they do to keep this going, but in the more immediate future, I'm also very curious when this roadmap does come, because again, we're approaching the second month of the year here, and I feel like the most opportune time is to do it sooner rather than later, to set the plans and expectations and not wait for any of that hype to potentially fall off, as just mentioned. Personally, I was thinking we would have seen this right away as the team got back into the studio for work, but it, of course, didn't happen that way, and that's totally fine. But hey, no time like the present. So perhaps it's possible that with this update upcoming in just a day or two here at this point on the 19th for the Toxic Swamp, that we get our first content update of the year, and perhaps it brings along with it a roadmap at the least of everything else. Maybe another map, maybe a new map condition and event that we see that is more minor scale compared to like a new map but is in line with something like the Cold Snap event. So a lot of unanswered questions in regards to that, plus weapons, archetypes, and things, but definitely interested to see what 2026 has. One thing that I do think, just to kind of yap here for a second, I think would be pretty cool is if they're talking about trying to get these different experiences and bring them all into the gameplay loop of what we have. Listen, I love both PvP and the PvE elements here, and I love the fact you can choose which one you want to do. But I do think it'd be cool if every so often you had these sort of like, I don't know, for a week or two, these events you could take part in on various maps that say the Emperor's off in the distance, which people seem to think they're getting closer to the boundaries of the map, so like maybe that hints at something. But like you have a PvE map condition for an hour at a time, a couple of times a day for like a week or so, where everybody queues in. They don't go and try and fight each other, but instead they try and take down this behemoth of an Ark that takes up almost the entirety of the map. This massive, you have to work together to end up taking it down, and then if you succeed, you get some awesome loot that there's more than enough for everybody to end up getting a unique blueprint out of it or something like that, where you're not finding just one or two blueprints for this giant archetype that would take the entire match to end up taking down. I think that something like that, and if you're talking about experiences, I do think would be pretty cool, but also, again, not to detract from any of the like PvP fans or anything like that, but it'd be a cool community-based and community-driven event, I think, that could maybe do something cool for those experiences in the future. But anyways, again, that part, just me yapping. But that's where we're at. It does seem like we're going to have a solid handful of maps to pick and choose from here by the end of this year here. I'm very curious where these slot into the overall map as well. I talked about it on stream the other day, but like I wouldn't be surprised if like, maybe not this year, but like in 2027, maybe midway through 2027 or 2028, because the game does apparently have a 10-year lifespan already planned out. I'd be curious if like we move north of where we're at in the map selection, if we move east of where we're at in the map selection, so we end up expanding even further out topside, but we'll have to wait and see. But anyways, I want to fill you guys in here on this new information because there's a lot of stuff coming out recently out of interviews with Virgil Watkins and the rest of Embark that have actually been really insightful stuff that gives us a good glimpse at what to expect and what we potentially could see changing with Arc Raiders in the near future and the rest of its life cycle. So I want to fill you guys in here on this. Let me know your thoughts down below. Drop a like if you guys enjoy the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Arc Raiders and other FPS coverage. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. See you later. Take care and peace.